Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our session, Higher Education Digital Marketing Trends for 2022 and Beyond, featuring Jamie Oleksic. Before we get started, I did want to share a few housekeeping items with y'all. This session will be recorded and we'll be providing links of the recordings to all attendees. All session attendees are on mute and off camera. And while the chat function is on for any questions you all have for the speakers, please go ahead and use the Q&A function. We'll be monitoring that during the session, and time permitting, we'll be covering as many questions as we can at the end. For any help you may need throughout the conference, you can email marketing@carnegiehighered.com. And of course, check out the Event Hub page for agenda info at any time. And finally, we encourage you to connect with your network during or after our sessions and use #TheConnection and tag @CarnegieHQ. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you all to our speaker today, my colleague, Jamie Oleksic, who is the AVP for Enrollment and Marketing Strategy here at Carnegie. Jamie, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheridan. It is nice to see you all. Thanks for joining our session today. So we are covering the higher ed digital marketing trends for 2022 and beyond. And if you've had a chance to look at the agenda, you can see it's jam-packed with a lot of platform insights. I think we have TikTok and Snapchat, we have Spotify speaking today. So really, really great day of different trends and insights directly from the source. So what I'm hoping to cover with you today is a little bit of where we are with the industry and some highlights there and changes to be aware of, and then also some high-level trends to keep in mind as you're thinking about all of these channels and the changes that are happening. So thrilled to be with you. Sheridan gave you a quick intro there, but for those of you that I haven't met on the road, which I did see a couple familiar faces in the chat, so welcome. My name's Jamie Oleksic. Like Sheridan mentioned, I'm AVP for Enrollment and Marketing Strategy. I've been with Carnegie for about 7 years now, and I've visited probably over 150 colleges across the country and have been in the higher ed space for about 12 years. Prior to my role here at Carnegie, I worked at UMBC in Maryland and did all of the many things you do in undergrad admissions, including international recruitment, some visit programming, and a few other things as well. And I live in the Philadelphia region, so thrilled to see some PA representation here today. I'm excited to meet you all on the road again. So to get us started and to set the stage, I'm really going to jump into some of the higher ed landscape that we're seeing and some insights directly from our partners with the different channels that we work with. And then I'm going to jump into 3 trends to really keep in mind as you're jumping into the upcoming year and beyond in your recruitment marketing. So before I get into the weeds of higher ed, I'm going to take us out of our higher ed world for a second, down the road of nostalgia and thinking about Blockbuster Video. For those that have been to Blockbuster, you probably remember just the smell and the feel and all of the things that come with Blockbuster. They really had it made at the time that they were around. So when you think about Blockbuster and the way that they functioned, they really controlled everything, right? They controlled the videos that we saw in the order that we saw them in the store. They controlled how frequently we would be in the store, right? There was a window you could return the movie to trade in for the next thing that came out. They controlled how long a video was available, how much inventory they had, and they controlled the format that you would view that piece of content on: DVD, video game. They really had it all kind of down pat. And so because of that, their main job was to get people in the front door. And once they did that, they could really predict sales of different pieces of content based on placement, based on demand, based on just their historical knowledge. Kind of back in the heyday, right? Well, think about how we consume video content today, right? We're the ones in the driver's seat. We will jump on our favorite apps and we maybe will start a movie and abandon ship halfway through. Maybe we will stream 6 full episodes of Stranger Things in a row, like I did last Saturday. Maybe we'll watch Schitt's Creek for the 10th time, all the way through all of the seasons. We're completely in control what we consume, when, where, and how. That's exactly the shift that's happening across, I would argue, every industry, but even in the higher ed space, right? Think about back in our heyday when we could really just increase enrollment by purchasing more names, by increasing our reach, getting them into the funnel, and then we could predict how it would shake out at each different juncture in our student journey. That's no longer the case, right? Students are now in the driver's seat, and we're living in what we're kind of calling the attention economy, right? Students are choosing where, when, and how to engage with us, and their attention is the demand that we have, what we're trying to achieve with all of our marketing and with all of our engagement. And it's challenging, right? Because not only are we competing with all of the schools that are in your competitive set with your local competitors, as well as your aspirational peers, but we're also competing with this, right? It's a really, really noisy space for particularly the Generation Z population, which now encompasses both grad and undergrad, but also for adult undergrad students and for transfers and for career changers. We're inundated with content on a daily basis. One of my colleagues uses the stat in his presentation as well, but we will scroll through the length of the Statue of Liberty on a daily basis on our social media channels, right? Think about all of that noise that we're now having to break through with our marketing for that glimmer of attention from a prospective student. We also are being held more accountable with our online presence, right? Back in the heyday, we could just increase how much we were visible online. We could ensure that we had a website. We can ensure that we have organic social channels that are active. We could ensure that we were putting out different pieces of media, different video assets. Now it's a much different game, right? We are being judged on every piece of content we're putting out there, on its authenticity, on how true it is to who we are as an institution, on what types of questions it is answering for our prospective students. So it's really, really important that there is a strategy around what we're putting out online, and students are putting a lot of weight on that. We did a survey to prospective undergraduate students and just asked the question, does the design of a website impact your impression of a college or university? And 95% of them said yes. Over 30% said a lot. It really is a huge impact to how they view a college or university. Generally, too, just us as consumers and users more broadly, 57% say that researching brands is the main reason they use the internet, right? They're looking for the true, authentic self of the different brands online, and higher ed is no different in that case. There's also a huge, huge emphasis on data privacy. We're living in the age of data leaks and of sensitivity to giving too much information to different websites. This generation that's now in our recruitment funnel, they grew up with that, and that's all that they know. And so they're a little less willing to give away their information online until they trust and feel confident in the brands that they're working with. And so we need to be thinking about that too as we're developing our strategy. And a lot of the platforms and channels, the main ones that we're using in our marketing as we're developing that student journey, have really responded to the sensitivity to privacy and this emphasis on privacy and security. They've responded to that with big changes to their channels and their platforms. You've heard of Apple, how they now have app tracking transparency on your phone. You've probably had to select on different websites and different apps if you want to be tracked. That's impacting a lot of marketing and what we're able to track and optimize to. You have different channels changing their attribution window for campaigns. Facebook, for instance, decreased their attribution window from 28 days to 1 single day. What that means is when we once could track if someone engaged with an ad and converted 10 days later, now we can only track if they convert within that same day. So we're losing visibility on the behaviors of students that engage with our different ads, which affects downstream and how we optimize and adjust our campaigns. There's also been a huge shift in users under 18 and the way that we're able to target them. Facebook rolled this out about a year ago, where you can't target students under 18 any longer, in particular when we're doing list-based targeting and retargeting. Google is now in talks about doing the same this coming August. So a huge impact for our traditional undergrad recruitment cycle and what we're able to target there. And so we need to kind of consider this as we're thinking about trends and our strategy for the year ahead. We also have kind of the boom of digital marketing in higher ed and what's been invested in there. Higher education post-COVID increased their digital ad spend 6 times. It was the highest of any industry in terms of ad spend. Why? Well, we took all of our dollars from recruitment travel, from print pieces, from all of these on-ground elements that we had in our recruitment strategy, and we reinvested them into digital marketing. Well, this increased the competition substantially across the board for digital marketing and the competitive landscape and competitive space there. So something that's really powerful in my opinion, and we feel so lucky to have a Google Premier partnership where we get access to this type of data, is looking at search trends in Google. I find this to be the most powerful thing to look at because it's true analysis on human behavior, right? It's looking at what people are actually searching for and when and how often and the devices that they're using. So it's a good measurement of what students are interested in, the demand and the changes that are happening there. So this is our most recent quarterly report from Google for undergraduate related keywords in the Google search platform, comparing January through March of 2022 compared to that same period last year. So really, really powerful. A couple of things I want to point out in terms of those changes starts with this queries section. So queries are quite simply searches happening in Google with undergraduate related keywords. So think undergraduate degree in Boston or business program in PA, those types of broad undergrad type keywords in a Google search engine. So if you look at 2020, which is that yellow line, and July of 2020, you see a huge spike in total queries. This is, of course, a lot of students that were asking the question, are we going to be in person in the fall? What are COVID protocols? What is higher ed going to look like for when I graduate high school? A lot of these types of things were happening in 2020, which saw a huge boom in the volume of queries. We as an industry responded to that by taking, again, all of those dollars from recruitment travel, investing them into digital. And that's when you see that huge spike on the right-hand side for impressions, that red line for 2021, right there around May. Those impressions are all because we invested heavily into Google and we're serving more ads to this audience than ever before. So huge, huge spike and shift there. Because of this, we're seeing really, really high competition in Google ad space. So I'm going to have you look at that right-hand graph called ad depth. You can see 2020 is that yellow line, 2021 red, and then the blue line 2022. Ad depth, quite simply, means the number of ads that are eligible to be served for a particular query. So the higher the ad depth, the more ads that are going to show, the higher the competition. So you can see a huge jump from 2020 to 2021, and now even in 2022 in terms of the depth. What does this look like in practice? Well, if you do a search yourself in Google for a general keyword, it could be undergrad, it could be grad, something education related. Take a look and see how many ads are showing up. Generally on a page, you'll see 4 to 5, maybe some at the bottom as well. But what's shocking is this is page 13, and we're still seeing 4 ads at the top of the search engine results page. That's incredible. Think about the last time you went to page 13 for anything, right? It's probably been a very, very long time, if ever. I think I only did this for this case study. So we're losing a lot of that visibility and increasing the competition to get in front of prospective students, which means we have to be much more strategic in the way that we place our ads. We used to, quite honestly, be able to set it, forget it in a way where we had a strong strategy, we had the ads in place, and they could kind of run and we could adjust as we go along. Now we need to be really strategic with our dollars to even get in front of these same prospective students, which can be really, really challenging. We're also seeing a few shifts in terms of device. And the only reason I call this out is because this is really, really important for higher ed specifically. When you think about a prospective student and the devices they're using and when they're using them, very often prospective students are starting their early research for colleges. So before they have their shortlist on their mobile device, right? They're in school, they're meeting with friends, they're traveling on the road, they're on summer vacation, they're doing their initial research all on their phone. It's not until they have more of an intent, they have their short list, they're starting an application, that they're going to shift to desktop. Why is this important? Well, the experience on mobile versus desktop sometimes is wildly different, right? Especially when we have a website that maybe hasn't gone through an update in quite some time, or a website with a lot of menu options. That's not always the easiest to use on a mobile device. So something to think about as you're thinking about that experience is that if you're really trying to impact the top end of that funnel or student journey, mobile device is going to be critical, and that experience on a mobile device is going to be critical. And this was proved out in the data that Google had provided us. So they showed us what the queries, clicks, and impressions over the last 2 years look like for a mobile device and then for a desktop device. Mobile, you see a huge gap between queries and clicks and impressions. That means for every query that's run, there are multiple clicks and impressions that are happening there. So we're more engaged. We're clicking on more things. We're discovering. We're probably going into the page and then bouncing out. We're doing a lot of early research, which means a lot of high-level skimming and clicking. When you're on a desktop, it's flat because we are much more intentional. We know what we're looking for. We're searching long tail keywords because we have two hands and we're typing on a computer. And we're asking a very specific question to get to a very specific place to then take action. Really different experience, and proves out the fact that mobile device is really where you're going to capture those new eyes and those new audiences, which makes it really, really critical. So one pro tip, throughout this presentation, I have a couple pro tips that are directly from the source, from our digital team that is much smarter than I in this space. And they've pulled together some really quick tips for you to take from this today, hopefully as low-hanging fruit to enhance kind of your student journey and some of the things you're doing on your strategy. But their biggest tip was, with competition being so high right now, particularly in search and the social channels with all the changes happening there, really it's more important than ever to ensure that you have a good user experience on the landing page you're driving to. An easy to access short form, preferably between 4 to 7 form fields, no longer, with a little bit of content and not a lot of area to kind of bounce off. It's really hard to get them to our page. We've kind of talked through the noisy space. We've talked through competition. Why lose them once they get there, right? Make it easy. Make it easy for them to get the answers they need and to request information. It's so critical. In terms of the social platforms, we're seeing a little bit of a shift there as well. You always had the powerhouses of Facebook and Instagram. For graduate, LinkedIn has always been pretty strong. YouTube, of course. But we're starting to see a lot of other players in the game in terms of the ad network. Snapchat has now been serving ads for a good amount of time now, where it's a little more accepted by the users. TikTok is now in the game as a highly downloaded platform. And so there are more options for students to engage with. We as users, as adults in the US, use about 7 different platforms on a monthly basis. So we're diversifying our experience online. It makes sense for us from the marketing side to also diversify our strategy. And I'll talk about that a little bit as well. Another pro tip from our team is to really think critically about TikTok, both from an organic standpoint and a paid standpoint. There's actually, I think I mentioned a TikTok session a little bit later today. Highly recommend joining that. They'll elaborate on a lot of this. But TikTok took the top spot for most downloaded app I know I myself downloaded TikTok over COVID-19, and many others did as well. So it's a really great place to get in front of people with your true, authentic self. One tip with TikTok is to really focus on user-generated content. Those highly produced videos that have been cut down and shortened, while they may work well on YouTube or on Instagram, they do not work well on TikTok. We really need something that's raw, that looks unfinished, that's funny, that is preferably performed by your current students, and something that's on trend with a lot of the things happening there. So it really requires some of that more authentic type video. All right, so that's a little bit of the landscape where we're at. Let's jump into some of these trends to consider for 2022 and beyond. And the first trend is website personalization. Now, this is a trend that I don't foresee going away anywhere anytime soon. We all experience website personalization on websites that we view outside of even the higher ed space, sometimes without even knowing it. Websites are adjusting to our behavior day in and day out. Where I find website personalization to be so powerful is we understand that a website project can be such a big lift. Generally, a capital project involves a lot of stakeholders and can be challenging to move forward with. So not always an option for impacting the upcoming fall's class. Website personalization allows you to kind of do a stopgap between that. You can now adjust what that experience is like for your students, create a good experience, create a seamless process without recoding your entire website, which can be really powerful. And why is this our number one trend? Well, your website is your catch-all for everything, right? Everything you're putting money into from a marketing and recruitment tactic leads to your website. I guarantee there's not one student that enrolls in your institution that hasn't been to your website at least 10 times, perusing, checking out the different processes they need to go through, the different programs that you offer. Everything ends with the website. And so it's something that I think goes overlooked because it is such a heavy lift and involves so many people, but it's such a critical piece of that recruitment funnel. So we asked the students, we said, do you enjoy when web content is tailored to your interest and your browsing behavior? 57% said, yeah, we do like that. We like when it's catered to us. But then we also asked, do you expect the content on the website to be personalized when you return? And 31% said that they do, which is shocking to me, that it's now gotten to the point where Gen Z, where prospective students, they're getting this experience in everything else that they're doing outside of their college search. They now kind of anticipate that the college search is going to be similar in that way. The beauty of personalization is that it can be based on a lot of different things, right? We can base it on the campaigns that they interact with. We can base it on their website behavior. So if they are maybe listed as an undecided student in your CRM, but they're spending a lot of time on your education program pages, that's helpful intel for your college counselors when they're doing a call campaign or when they are engaging with them in other ways. And so why not show them something on the website that talks about maybe an education specific open house or the admissions counselor that can speak best to your education programs, connecting them directly with that person, driving them again towards that decision. Program of interest, if they've identified that, you can customize their content based on that. Certainly position in the funnel. I know a lot of our comms in higher ed are related to app status. You can do that similarly with the website. So if they are an inquiry or an applicant, you can make sure that they're seeing content that's part of where they are in that journey and the next step they need to take. Demographic information can be a really powerful way to personalize. I have a client in Boston that they showcase and highlight Boston and the scenery in Boston more so for their out-of-state students than their in-state students, because those in-state students, they know Boston already, and it's not as much that value prop versus those that are out of state where it's new and fresh and exciting. And you can also do it based on student personas that you develop. Why not serve content that you know is going to speak to the motivations and the emotions of the student body based on those personas that you had developed for your students? And this is something that we all experience every day, right? Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, those are all personalized based on what we've searched on, based on content we've purchased, based on songs that we've added to our playlist. They're all constantly personalizing and responding to what we're telling them. Why not do the same with our website? So to give you an example, we had done some website personalization for the University of Cincinnati through our custom CDP, which is customer data platform called Clarity. And Clarity is a really simple way to track your users and to deploy website personalization without hard coding your website. It's a simple piece of code that goes in your template, and then you can personalize and create different campaigns over your website with different overlays. So University of Cincinnati, they had on their landing page a big hero image with some buttons to a learn more, and then a learn more button at the bottom. They had noticed they weren't getting the inbound leads they wanted to get from the page. So they wanted to test some different placements, different experiences. So we did 2 different personalization interactions for them and tested their performance. We had a banner at the bottom in a different color that would call out that request information button. And then for those users that had already visited the page multiple times, we actually did what we call a light box feature, where we dimmed out the back and had it pop up front and in the forefront with the inquiry form right there in the center of the page. And you can see here on the right-hand side that conversion rate for the light box, so the dimming of the background and that calling that inquiry form to the forefront, drastically outperformed the 2 other interactions. We made it easy for that user because we knew they had been back to the page multiple times and they wanted to know more. And so we made it easy for them to request information, particularly on a mobile device. All right, so website personalization, really powerful, really great. The other trend that I teased a little bit in the beginning is diversified channel mix. I think there are certainly the tried and true platforms that have worked really well in higher ed that we recommend maintaining, things like Facebook, Instagram, of course, Google search, having a presence there, display retargeting, but there are so many other channels that could really cater to your specific audiences based on just their targeting capabilities and just the less amount of competition that's in those spaces. So before you jump into any type of channel diversification, we recommend using this tool, printing it out, hanging it on your wall. This is a really great way to recenter on, is this the right platform for us based on what we're trying to achieve? What are we trying to achieve from this? Is this an awareness play where we're trying to get site traffic from new audiences? Is this to garner leads? Is this to move our current leads towards application? What is our goal? What are we trying to achieve? Who's our audience? How old are they? Do they work? Do they not work? What are their interests? What kind of job are they looking to do? Are they first gen? What does that audience look like? That's when we start to think about and narrow in on the platform that works the best based on the user base for those platforms. And then these last 2 steps are the ones that I would say are most frequently forgotten, the last one especially. Of course, measuring success that matches up with the goals we identified, but then developing a cadence to check in on the campaigns and to pivot strategy if needed is oh so critical. Maybe it's every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, developing that check-in to recenter, look at performance month over month, year over year, and adjust strategy from there. The beauty of social channels is that they generally all follow suit with each other. And so with Facebook paving the way with just the most amount of different types of targeting, most of the other channels have followed suit and now have the same capabilities. These are the four that we see most often and that we found work really well in the higher ed space. Things like behavioral targeting, what are they searching for? What sites are they visiting? What are they telling us based on their online behavior that they're interested in? Custom audiences, so valuable. These can be a list. These can be a bucket of users that have visited your website, reaching people that have told us something or that we know something about with very specific messaging, retargeting off of your website, of course, always recommend. And then location-based targeting. Are we geofencing your feeder high schools, feeder companies? Are we using mobile footprinting to reach parents as well? What does that all look like for your users? And then, of course, don't forget about those lists. I tease them in the customer audience section, but so important. This could be a list match on a social channel by email. You could do something like IP targeting, where you're serving ads directly into the home of those individuals on the list so that mom and dad see, and the friends that come over and connect to the Wi-Fi see those ads. So it can be really powerful. And a pro tip with lists is to marry up your digital list strategy with the same exact segmentation as your mail campaigns. So if you're sending a different mailer in state versus out of state, why not mirror that segmentation with your list-based digital strategies? Start running those campaigns 2 to 3 weeks ahead of your mail drop to increase that engagement with the mail piece when it gets there and arrives, and there's recognition there. All right. So number 3, in terms of trends, video storytelling. We all know video is what makes us feel things, right? On the internet. That's where we connect on a human level with brands, and it's also critical for prospective students. We are an industry of humans, right? I would argue we have the most human connection of every industry. So why not leverage that in our video storytelling? Let's find those faculty members that are so passionate about what they do. Let's find those students that are just excited to be connecting with other students. Let's have parents come on there and talk about their experience as parents to ease the minds of other parents. Video is the best way to do that, always, and can complement a lot of the other content that you're developing, whether it be blogs or organic posts or email communication. It's really easy to embed a video for that added point of connection. It also works really well with search. So Google, when we're talking about video, very often we're talking about YouTube. Certainly you can use video in a lot of different channels. YouTube is probably one of the more powerful. But what's really fascinating is YouTube functions both as a social platform with video as well as a search platform, right? So it's leveraging the same power of Google search, where it's pulling those keywords and answering the question, but now it's using video, which is a really powerful way, again, to answer a question and to build a connection. And so you can start to move people with your video. And what's really powerful is that prospective students are using video to evaluate institutions. So when we were fully remote during COVID-19, this was integral, right? So many of us probably developed campus tours, developed video content just to create some sort of visit experience. Now we can repurpose a lot of that great content, expand on a lot of that great content, just to ensure that we have as much as possible to build the picture of who our institution is before we can actually get them to come on campus. So what's interesting is we can spend all of this time putting together all of these amazing videos on our YouTube channel that describe the institution. And we could find that our most searched videos are ones produced by actual students that we didn't even know about. I know when I worked at UMBC, one of the most popular videos, again, this was 8 years ago, so different age in video even. One of our most viewed videos was actually a student that followed a squirrel around campus and narrated his day as if the squirrel was a student on campus. It wasn't the best, the most flattering, but it was funny and unique and very viewed by students and gave a tour of campus from a different perspective, if you will. That's what students are doing. There's almost sometimes a distrust in the highly produced content, especially when they're early on in their search. So they're going to look for mentions, for posts from students, from people that are not necessarily affiliated with the institution. So I do recommend just doing a quick audit of what's out there, get a feel for what's out there, and identify if it's truly authentic for your institution, because I guarantee students are viewing that. It's also a really great way to identify current students that maybe you could use for some TikTok video content or user-generated content. They're already active on YouTube, they might be willing to be active in a way that's helpful for you all and some of the things that you're putting out there. So a couple types of videos that I recommend just thinking about. Anthem videos are always really powerful, can be great to complement a view book. These are kind of the highly produced, this is who we are, this is our power message type video. They can be a little longer. They're nice to put in emails to parents, things like that. Faculty interviews are helpful for program specific type content. Student stories, of course, have all the student stories you possibly can. Campus tour. I love the day in the life videos. Those are easy to snip up for TikTok, Instagram story type content. Application process overview, a tour of the city, the surrounding area. Because of COVID-19, I think there's an added awareness to location than ever before, both from a standpoint of ease of travel to the school in case they need to go home or someone needs to come get them, but also just knowing that they're going to be exploring the city in part of a new environment and want to get a feel of that brand and authenticity of the city as well. And then tours of the dorms, of course, everybody wants to know where they're going to be sleeping. A couple pro tips, 15-second creative always tends to perform really well. Again, it's that attention economy. When students are in their research page, we have a very short time span. Let's jam pack as much as we possibly can in those short snippets to get in front of students. And then the other pro tip is to potentially test some video assets in less saturated channels. Many of these channels have less targeting restrictions. Again, Facebook and Instagram are kind of first movers in a lot of the major targeting changes. And so some of these other channels over here represented are Spotify, Twitch, OTT, and TikTok. There can be some less restrictions there, and then a little less higher ed competition. When we all took those recruitment dollars and reinvested in digital, a lot of us reinvested in the channels we were already using. There wasn't a lot of offshoot into some new channels, and so there's less higher ed specific content in some of these other channels, which means more opportunity to stand out. All right, so in summary, a couple points that I hit on. Students, they choose where, when, and how to engage. They're in the driver's seat. The sooner we can admit that, the sooner we can develop a strategy that responds to that in a positive way. We're being held accountable for more than just the volume of our online presence, but the quality and authenticity. Competition continuing to rise, so we got to be smarter, more strategic there. Website personalization is such a great way to enhance the user experience while also running marketing campaigns to an attentive audience, while also providing a band-aid to any unsavory pages on your website that you just don't have the bandwidth to recode. Diversifying your channel mix can help you reach the right students, right time. Don't forget about your list ever. Please leverage those. They're so valuable, and you can complement a lot of those more costly print on ground strategies with some digital overlay to, again, increase that engagement. And then video storytelling will always bring that human element to your overall strategy. So highly recommend there. And also, I know you all will receive these slides afterwards and can view this recording. There's a lot of great content that speaks in more depth to what I had talked through. So I just kind of linked the ones that are most relevant to this conversation for you to view later on as well. So with that, I'll pause for questions. Sheridan, I don't know if there were any while I was chatting there.
Yeah, we had several, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. One of these, I think you alluded to briefly, Jamie, but Evelyn had a question about TikTok and asking if something raw and funny on TikTok actually helped raise the perception of quality education. Specifically, I think you did allude to this, but as it relates to specific audiences like undergrad, grad versus online, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. There's a line to toe, right? We want to make sure that they know this is the quality education, that this is a serious thing they're deciding, but we also want to be light and fun and true to ourselves. I recommend for TikTok, before trying to jump into, I would say, the funny trends, right? The ones that live and die within a week's time. I would start with things like campus tours, student interviews, day in the life. Students find a way of being kind of funny and savvy without overly trying to perfect any kind of trend. So I think that's probably a good place to start, see what the reaction is there, and then maybe expand your efforts from there.
That's great. And in a similar vein, we also had a question from Lisa asking about the difference in channels that you would recommend using versus grad, maybe versus on undergrad. Do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, I always recommend for all audiences to start having a display or a social retargeting campaign running 12 months out of the year that's segmented based on key pages of your site. So your grad pages can have a different ad creative than your undergrad pages. That's a good baseline. From there, I do recommend elements of search for key times of year for both. Again, you're going to have keywords specific to both undergrad and grad for those separate campaigns. And then having social campaigns for your big inquiry driving months, generally the fall, sometimes the spring, depending on the program, but maybe a 3-month stint of Snapchat or TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram to generate those leads. And then, of course, you'll then stay in front of them with retargeting moving forward. So there's a lot of ways to kind of slice and dice, but I generally recommend retargeting and PPC annually with a burst of social throughout the year based on those critical times.
That's great. And then lastly, Bill had a question. How do you reconcile privacy concerns earlier in the presentation when you talked about against something like retargeting?
Yeah, so there is a lot of shifts happening with Google with some of the changes to cookie-based targeting that is still evolving, and I think digital is going to have to evolve because of it. A lot of websites are now required to, and many of them already have kind of the bar that comes up that says, do you accept cookie-based tracking, accept or deny, leveraging that, and then also being really smart about what pages you're tagging for retargeting. I think you want to ensure the students you're staying in front of are the ones that actually have intent. So maybe those application pages, your program pages, those that we know that they're doing research, there's an interest there, they're not just on the homepage, right? They're going somewhere that they have intent, and you're getting in front of them with relevant messaging from there.
That's great. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
And regarding the first question we had about TikTok, there's been a lot of questions I think come up about TikTok, and we actually do have a session today at 1 Eastern time focused just on TikTok. So hope y'all will join us for that. But thank you all so much for joining this session, and an enormous thank you, obviously, to you, Jamie, for sharing such valuable information with us today. Again, if you all need any help throughout the conference, please email marketing@Carnegie highered.com. And I had posted the link in the event hub page in the chat, so you can take another look at the agenda to add any sessions to your calendar over the next 2 days. And then next up for the Connection Conference is from our friends at Snapchat, titled Ace the Test, Education and Learning on Snapchat at noon Eastern time. Thank you all again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.